imaginative, and depending on what we're talking about, are doing courageous. I call it the I am soul.
Beautiful.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, I love poetry, and I do kind of I call it soul speak. I made about a hundred soul speak videos, and we're waiting for all the platforms to come on.
Okay, sure.
But
Yeah, that soul speak idea is cool because we
Yeah.
just feel like sometimes poetry is like channeling, right? It's just
it
coming
is
in.
channeling. It is
It's
channeling.
Yeah.
just coming
It
in.
absolutely is.
I always share that belief that, I noticed I used to go to or compete in like the national poetry slams and things, and so many times I would see people performing live and just be like, wow, they're channeling right now, like
Yeah.
something else is coming through. And I've
Yeah.
felt that way about some of my own pieces. And I think whether people realize it or not, I do believe really artists in general a lot of times are channeling, but
That's when you get in the zone.
Absolutely. No doubt. It's such a because I'd never done anything artistic until Soulogy, and then a couple of years into it, I heard Soulogy One Studios, and they're like, "Go downstairs and make a studio, put your words to music or something about music." I'm like, "What am I supposed to do?" So I put on a neoclassical, read a piece, put a video together with it, and put it out, and did about 100 of them with all different kinds of music and stuff.
Wow. That's awesome that you were like willing to put it out there right away.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what got us all? Isn't that what got us all to where we're at? Following that guidance, it didn't make any sense.
And we laughed because are we in the live part?
Yeah, but let me. We got 15 people in the house. Let me just play the intro. Let me play the intro real quick, and that'll give people a little bit more time. About a minute and 19 seconds.
Okay.
What's happening, everybody? We got this beautiful couple in the house. They are the Twin Soul Poets. We were just talking a little poetry.
Oh, yeah.
So this is Hamilton Sage and Ingrid Alli.
Yes.
And they look like they're carrying the divine sacred union frequency, I would have to say.
Thank you.
They're beautiful.
We're growing every day.
I don't know which one's more handsome. You're both beautiful. And obviously together you create that third energy that's just, taking hold in this world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can feel
So it's a pleasure to have y'all on, and I'm really happy to start the day today with a couple of poets. And I'm interested to hear, how this all happened, because there's so many.
We were really excited. Yeah, we were really excited to come on the show with you. We were saying before that we just love the energy and the synergy that you're creating with the people that you're talking to, and it resonated with us right away. So.
Wow.
It's a lot of the kind of conversations we have with friends, and just, these kinds of things of what's going on in the world from the perspective of this sort of awakening of consciousness. It seems like this mass awakening has been going on, but really kind of escalating lately. And
it's that unity of opposites. You have all this crazy stuff going on within the past year or so.
I'm gonna grab him.
Okay, we're gonna go get a little friend of ours who's just decided to bark outside the door.
No problem.
But this unity of opposites has just been an invitation to all kinds of growth and awakening, and we've really been enjoying that ride. And you had mentioned the poetry earlier. We believed ourselves to be twin flames, twin souls, so hence the name Twin Soul Poets. But the whole way that Twin Soul Poets was born was kind of as a joke at first. We were communicating with each other on Skype at the time when Hamilton was living overseas in Thailand. And we had reconnected and we were kind of dating from afar. And we were writing poetry to each other back and forth. Hamilton kind of introduced me to the idea that I might be a poet, because when we met, I was just writing in journals and I wasn't thinking of it as poetry. I just was expressing.
It was obvious.
And he's like, you're a poet. So we're writing back and forth. And at some point, one of us said, what about performing together, Twin Soul Poets? And Hamilton said, I don't know if the world's ready for that. And it was just this kind of joke. And when we ended up reuniting and coming together, we were like, what if we tried this? What if we tried writing pieces together, not just to each other, but connecting?
And that was something I had a lot of experience doing through the national poetry slam scene. I had competed and coached in that whole scene for years. And we, a lot of things that we would do during competition would do group pieces, multiple poets on stage at a time, sharing a piece. And so it was really fun to me to I think the first one we ever put together, we literally were just like, well, let's toy with this idea. And we took 2 love poems that we had just written to each other like months apart. Yeah. And literally just read them like back and forth, line for line. And it was like insane time, like the way multiple parts rhymed, multiple lines would like overlap, where my line would end with story. I, like looking into eyes, and then her next line would start with I. And so like we were just like, oh my God, like this is it's already done. If
we needed a sign that this was one of the things that we were to do, that was it.
You can't make this. You can't make this shift up, man.
Speaking of, it feels appropriate because we have this guy whining outside. So there you go.
There we go.
This is a little friend of ours. This is my family French bulldog whose name is Hamilton. So I actually named him 2 years before we met, and we could not agree upon the name. And then it like zapped into my head, and I was like, "What about Hamilton?" And that was the first time everyone was like, "Yeah, that's a great idea." And then cut to 2 years later, I meet Hamilton, and it was just a weird synchronicity, one of many that just seemed to always be pointing to us coming together.
Now we have quality ham and ham time.
Ham and ham time. He thinks he's the original Hamilton, though, for sure.
That's funny. So when you guys connected, I guess you connected online. Did when you heard his name or saw his name, did it register that it was the same name as?
Well, we met in a meditation class.
Okay. It also had to do with nonviolent communication and creating positive relationships together.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it was a mutual friend of ours who was facilitating the course, and she had kind of invited me in to participate in the course. And I was, single at the time. So I was like, yeah, I was really like working on the self, and I was about to travel overseas. So it was a very like interesting time for my like spiritual journey. And I was really enjoying the course. And then one day, like I think 7 weeks into the course, I had actually like really hit it off with Ingrid's mom. Her parents were in the course, and we would sit together a lot and talk, and she had been to some of my poetry groups events and stuff. So we had this cool like connection, and I just really enjoyed talking to her mom. And then one day Ingrid walked in with her mom into the class, and I was just immediately like,
It's just interesting that he knew my parents first. It was like the best in you could possibly have. He's also already like buddy with both of my parents. And our mutual friend had invited me in to talk about my experience doing her course and how her work had helped me. And I was like, absolutely, I'll come talk about it. And then kind of our famous moment that we talk about with people, at the end of the course, she would always do this eye gazing meditation where you would go around the room and be present with each person, truly let yourself see and be seen. And when we got to each other, we had talked a little bit before class, he was looking at my journal, but when we got to each other in that moment, it was like this palpable moment. It was like time stood still. It was like this knowing, the thing that a lot of people, twin flames, will talk about, that when you look someone in the eye for the first time in a deep way, we didn't finish going around the rest of the circle. We were just kind of locked in, and there was this
soul recognition.
Yeah,
soul
it was
recognition.
Soul recognition. That's absolutely what.
What about? I know for my wife and I was because we were half a world apart. She was in Australia, South Australia. So we connected on Messenger, but I convinced her to talk to me the next morning. She didn't talk to people. I said, no, you got to talk to me. But the voice, as soon as I heard her voice and vice versa, we didn't say it at the time, but that was it. I mean, it was like something came in.
It's a similar feeling. Of course, we saw each other first. But there was definitely everything resonated. Voice, energy.
Yeah. The fact that we were in a meditation course together, very, immediately knew we had this deep shared interest on like a spiritual level. She had a notebook with her that I saw her leafing through, and it just looked like all this poems and stuff. And I was just, so immediately I was like,
well, she's not a poet,
like,
but she wasn't a poet. She had all this poetry.
I was a writer. That's always been something that I've done as a way to heal, to express, but it was always for me. I didn't share it that much. I was acting, so I got him into acting. He got me into the poetry.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So you were acting in Atlanta.
I was acting. So we met in Virginia, where we're both from.
Okay, so you're in. Okay, I got you. So you're in Virginia.
When we met, we were both about to move in about 2 months. He was moving to Thailand, and I was moving to Atlanta. So it was like this. We call it like a shooting star experience, because we knew we only had a little bit of time when we met before we were both going our separate ways. So it was this beautiful, like, bright burning experience with each other. And then we moved on, but we ended up reconnecting, as we said earlier, through Skype. And that's
through Skype. So you're in Virginia. He meets your parents. First of all, you name your soulmate friend there. You name Hamilton. 2 years before, you meet in Virginia, the meditation class. He's already got your parents greased. And then so you've got 2 months there. Something's going on. You have the eye gazing.
Yeah.
Did you verbalize it, or did you just kind of let the telepathy speak?
At that time, like when we, that night, it was like I knew I was traveling. I was trying to play it cool, right? Like I was like, part of me wanted to get her, ask for her phone number, but I was like, I don't know if I should. One, I'm like, I'm leaving soon, so that would be kind of stupid. What am I going to try to get into right now? And then the other part of me was like, well, if it's meant to be, and it's really like this palpable thing, because I was really on that kind of ride anyway. I had so much synchronicity going on in my life at that period anyway, and I was like, well, if it's meant to be, I'll just let it ride. We'll run into each other again. But I was doing this back and forth in the parking lot, like literally, like, no, I'll just go. We'll see each other again. No, I should get her number. No. And I literally like went back and forth multiple times, but ultimately I was just like, I'm just going to get in the car and go. And later on, after the fact, like a couple weeks later, our friend who had been running the course I had talked to her. I was kind of like trying to feel out, like, hey, is that Ingrid girl, is she ever going to come to the class again? And she was like, well, I could call her for you if you want. And I was like, no. And then later she ended up texting me. It was like, so I was with Ingrid just a while ago, and she said you could totally call her. Here's her number. And at that point, I was like really excited, and we ended up going on a couple dates and stuff, and really just decided right away, like, okay, we both know our time is limited here, but like, let's just enjoy each other's company while we can.
And that's a great segue to, the other thing that we do is we give love and relationship advice on our YouTube channel, Twin Soul Poets. And the very first date that we really had, we went to this nice wine bar in Richmond, and we sat down and both talked about how we had really come to a comfortable place with our aloneness. And that we had embraced that time. And Hamilton shared a quote from Hafiz, which do you remember it?
Yeah, it goes something like, I might butcher it a little bit, but the poem kind of starts as like, do not surrender your loneliness so quickly. Let it cut deep. it will season your heart like no other divine ingredient can. And it kind of goes on from there. But I remember reading that poem at that time where I was really in a very introspective period, and had kind of taken a step back to savor that alone time. And that resonated with me so much. And we were having this conversation where she was kind of in a very similar period. We had just both kind of come out of a pretty intense, like heavy dark night of the soul that was interestingly like kind of coincided with each other. Like before meeting, it seemed like the timelines of both of our sort of dark nights of the soul had been happening simultaneously. And so both of us were sort of like embracing a lot of this time to really
do the inner work,
integrate that, I think.
We have to say, one of the craziest things that ends up happening, because our relationship is truly filled with synchronicities, some of them that are really unbelievable. The quote he had shared with me was by Hafiz, right?
Yeah.
The poet. So cut to several years later, we're getting married in 2017. And we had this beautiful wedding. I mean, it was so amazing, even better we could have imagined. And that night we went to stay at this really nice hotel on our wedding night. And when we pull up at like 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever time is after the wedding, we stop behind this one car and Hamilton goes, "Ingrid, look at the license plate of this car." And I look down and it just says Hafiz.
No way.
Like, what a freaking full circle moment that, you know, it goes from that moment to talking about aloneness that led to this relationship that I could have never.
Unreal, man.
It's just amazing. Yeah, we have so many experiences like that.
So you know, one of the things that you know, you guys do the YouTube channel and you give some relationship advice and that type of thing. And I'm sure because of the moniker Twin Soul Poets, that, you know, people look at you a certain way. I bet you've been asked this question. I wanted to find out what your take on it was, which is, how do you attract your twin? And, you know, my wife is an energy practitioner, has been for many, many years. And, you know, I didn't understand the experience when it occurred. I just knew it intuitively, kind of deal. But I had been doing the same thing. I'd been alone, and I'd been doing it'd been 3 years, 4 years of the dark night of the soul. But what I came through with it, you know, with all of it in discussing it with her, was how we empty the vessel, so to speak. Like we, you know, in other words, what I've always told people when they ask me, even though I'm not a practitioner, I just say, well, the way I understand it, you bring yourself into alignment, then you pull that twin in of the like alignment. What's y'all's take on that? I mean, you both mentioned being alone. You both mentioned the dark night. Do you feel like that's kind of a prerequisite for everybody, is to stop looking outside and just clean your shift up?
We'd agree. That's a great place to start. The other thing I would say is intention and asking. I had an experience before I'd met Hamilton. I had just broken up with someone else, actually, and this was maybe 9 months, I want to say, before we met. But I was feeling really down. I'd just come through this dark night of the soul, but I knew I really wanted to meet my person. I wanted to meet my life partner. And I had gone to this spiritual center my parents attend with them. And afterwards, I walked out back into this beautiful garden that they have back there. And I was by myself. So I was in this state and my heart was aching a little bit from the previous relationship. And I just asked out loud, I said, "God, universe, like, I really would like to meet my long-term partner. And I don't know if the person that I was just with was it, or if they're on the way, but if you could please just give me a sign, I'd really appreciate it." And I just said this out loud. And right after that, I sat down on this bench. And as soon as I sat down, something bit me. And I turned around, you know, to see what it was that had bit me. And I didn't see what it was, but I saw that there was a plaque on the bench that said, "I will send him to you." And I have a picture of it now. And I eventually took Hamilton to the bench and got a picture of him on it. But in that moment, this peace came over me, and kind of leading back to what you said, Todd, that I got in a space where I was really just trusting the journey and trusting the time that I was having by myself to be important and that was a part of the twin flame journey. So I had put my request out to the universe. I had put my intention out, but then there was that point of trust, and that sign, I mean, I couldn't have gotten a more direct sign than that. I will send him to you. But the peace that came over me was profound.
And I do think a willingness to go into the self and to really be prioritizing self-growth, because this is something we've been talking about a lot on our channel actually recently, because we have been getting questions around it. But I think that it's really is crucial if you are wanting to have a twin flame relationship, or even like a soulmate relationship that's that deeply intimate, to be interested and be prioritizing and focusing on self-growth, because of the way that the twin flame dynamic will so powerfully bring up all the things that, you know, are yet to be processed through this constant reflecting, like your biggest challenges, your biggest fears, your biggest limitations will come to the surface. And if you are not having this willingness to face that stuff and kind of like use it as an opportunity to grow together,
don't ask for a twin flame. Don't ask for a twin flame if you're not.
No shit, right?
Well, I think it that often leads to that what people talk about is like the separation period, or the runner chaser dynamic, is like if that's feeling overwhelming at the time, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a little bit of this is just normal in any relationship anyway, but you can really shorten and actually take advantage of those separation periods if you just have that simple perspective switch of like, okay, this is an opportunity here for me to look inside, look within, and be like, what am I learning about myself here? What in me is uncomfortable with this, with what's happening? Is there something that I can let go of? That kind of thing. I think that's crucial. That perspective is crucial for this kind of relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It is. That old saying of it's never them, it's always me. Really, really. I mean, you know, to me, that statement is like oneness is oneness. There's no in between. It's either all or nothing. And so if you're going to follow that rule of the road, it's never them, it's always me, which to me means I am the creator of all of this. I can take responsibility for all of this. I may not be able to instantly transform something, but in the physical, but it's getting closer. It's getting closer, right? But in a relationship, it's such a you know, this type of intense connection. You know, a lot of people, and I think that's why the twin flame, you know, label has gotten so distorted, is because it's been misidentified. Although it is an absolute 5D contemporary new template fairy tale, it gets confused with the old fairy tale, because in the real fairy tale, it is a beautiful masterpiece in process. And so these
and it's
points,
always unfolding,
right? These there's an ebb and flow to the universe. There's an ebb and flow to the relationship. My wife often says, when I hear her talking to clients sometimes, and to me sometimes, she'll say that the relationship is, in other words, she says, how can the relationship always be in alignment if I'm not always in alignment?
Exactly.
Right? Or the other person's not always in alignment. So to respect the energetic separations, be they physical, non-physical. And I love what you said about, you know, taking that time. And that's probably, to me, the most valuable part of the energetic separation is the solitude, and then really, really focusing on that it's never them, it's always me. Not that there's anyone to blame. It's not like that. It's just like, what can I get out of this? This is my responsibility, my contribution to the relationship. And I think you guys were pretty much, talking the same thing.
Looking at that time as a gift instead of a burden or a problem. I think that a lot of the challenges that people have, especially within the twin flame dynamic with the separation or the runner chasers, because they're looking at it as this negative thing. Like, I don't want to be separated from them. I don't want problems. I don't want issues.
Resistance.
Right. But the perspective is everything. And as you said, like, you can decide how you're going to show up. Like, every day we're making an agreement that we're going to show up in the best way we can, but I can't determine how Hamilton's going to show up. I can only decide that I'm going to show up as the best self that I can, that I'm going to continue to be committed to growth. And in our union, that's me saying that I also trust and believe that Hamilton will do the same. But it's not about me controlling him or making him do that. When you live by that example, it inspires the other person to do it anyway.
And I think it is important to acknowledge that, like, you know, to not get it confused with the old, you know, Disney fairy tale love story, because it's not all flowers and roses when you are in, you know, something we were just talking about is like, it's almost, I feel like the twin flame dynamic especially is almost like a spiritual accountability partner. And like the whole relationship as a whole is going to push you up against your old limits, your fears, all your stuff. It's gonna come up, and that is difficult and scary a lot of times. It's not all easy, and to know that that's almost like the blessing of it, because and then it's not always just about being in bliss. You know, it's like it does take work sometimes, and I think just knowing that going in is
and
important.
Finding the beauty in the growth. Yeah. Because sometimes the most surprisingly beautiful moments are when it seems like it's a mess, but you find this, surrender. You know, moment, right? This surrender, this moment of beauty, this breakthrough that happens when you're willing to face the toughest aspects of the relationship and of yourselves.
And I didn't know what twin flames were before we met. She kind of introduced me to that concept, and explaining it, I was like, yeah, it kind of does seem like that's what's going on here. But I had my own sort of intention at the time, like before we met, similar to how she kind of put that call out to the universe. Like, I was doing this course, and the course that my friend was teaching was all centered around a lot of like David Data's teachings. You know, and he talks about a lot of the divine feminine, divine masculine dynamic, and that kind of Toltec path. And I was really struck by something that he said at one point, where like love and making love should feel like opening each other to God's consciousness. Like, I want to be open to God's consciousness by your love. And like, just that statement, I was like, whoa, I want that, you know. And that's
a sacred sexuality frequency statement. That's what that is. Exactly. It is. It's a beautiful.
The twin flame dynamic is definitely an invitation to that opportunity, and it's there for anyone, I believe. You know, a lot of this is ancient wisdom that we've just lost along the way. But like we talked about earlier, those things are being rediscovered in this time, this 5D experience.
Well, I love it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
You there? Oh
yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. It just dropped. I love what you said about, or what we were talking about with the fairy tale thing, because it is work. Nothing in this universe comes. It's always an equal energy exchange, right? And I think that, I mean, to me, because this incarnation is so physical. Like, every day, even though we're more expanded, even though we're more multidimensional, and even though we've got higher sensitivities and skills and abilities, the human is more and more of the emphasis. You know, the human aspect, the human body, the human experience. And so I look at in my relationship the last 5+ years, and how it's kind of followed the collective dance of the masculine and feminine. And then in terms of like a personal journey, is being able to see parts of myself I don't know how I could have ever found them. And I'm talking about I'm talking about polarities. Like we were talking about the mirror, like the parts of for every part of a narcissist that was still unconscious in me that I found, and I'm sure there's more, I found parts of the empath in me that I was unconscious of. So it's this really really kind of a walk of integrity. And that's what I wanted to really comment on real quick was, you know, I'm a big believer that we are everything. But for whatever reason, by design, we're being given what we're given when we're given it. And I believe it's directly related to the level of our spiritual maturity and how much we've embraced and live and walk and talk responsibility as a conscious creator.
Mm-hmm.
And so this information that you get from these relationships, and they don't necessarily, I wouldn't think they, and I know individuals or couples, they're not romantic, that have the same type of frequency, but the value of them really, to me, as the days have gone by, and it's hard on the human and it's beauty for the soul, but it's these moments of epiphany and revelation that come from recognizing something in the beautiful mirror that you've created for yourself.
Yeah.
That you integrate as your own. And I think that's probably the best lesson that I've gotten is when my wife first came over in 2017. She came from Australia, and we spent 10 weeks together. And she kind of knew already, like she knew what was going on. I didn't know what was going on, but so I was right. Does that ring a bell? So right. So well, that's how it works.
That's
so
divine feminine awareness.
That's it. So she knew what was going on. She knew I was connected, but she also knew I had a bunch of unconscious programming. So she started very directly pointed, showing me what I was missing. And so one day, about, I don't know, it's probably about a year and a half, 2 years later, after we had a divine union ceremony, she said to me, like, it was like 2 years later, she says, so what I did, Todd, was I owned everything that I saw in you as my own. And then I went, oh, I wish you would have told me that 2 years ago, but I probably wouldn't have understood it. But you get what I'm saying? It's like, it is intense, but you have this gift of somebody so close to you that even though it's hard to look at in yourself, it's easier to accept in yourself because of the love that is, it's just innate.
That's so crucial. And even an analogy that's come to me a lot recently is like the ascension process, very similar to the way a tree grows. Like ascension is not all about just reaching towards the heavens and stuff. A tree, to grow really tall, a tree has to root itself and grow deep roots by digging down deep into the dirt and deep into the dark soil. To be the further down it goes, the more it can reach up. And I think that that's a big lesson that's coming through the human experience right now. Is a lot of the more awakened thinkers have been more connected to their higher chakras for years, of like the third eye opening and things, and receiving higher wisdom. But what we're still sort of figuring out is grounding that wisdom through our lower chakras, and especially like our sexual energy centers, but grounding that wisdom through action, through this physical experience that we're still in, because we can't just like float away
That's
yet.
right.
Like we're not there yet. And I think that is a big part of this ascension that we're still figuring out, is like, how do I take this higher wisdom and ground it down and go into the stuff that maybe feels difficult and that the resistance comes up in me, but like still open instead of resisting, and still figure out what's the lesson here. How can I ground into this so that I can reach further?
Integrating that.
Integrating
those higher, because for twin flames, especially when you connect, it can be easy to just go boom and just go into those, higher chakra experiences, and this transformational view of life where everything just looks like it's on this other plane, and you could get stuck there, or you could get caught up in that and not remember that, okay, this is also about grounding. This is also about connecting to the parts of myself I didn't want to see. This is also about healing my childhood wounds. This is also about becoming more human.
the more that we're willing to do that work, the more, I think, the more easy it gets, and the more access you have to the being a vessel, like you said, like sort of clearing that, all that work of grounding clears your vessel to be able to receive easier, to be able to see more clearly from this perspective of love, and from a perspective of, really in alignment with the divine creator consciousness, to sort of see through illusion and all that stuff. It's like, it helps you do that, to face your shit, and
That's right.
And twin flame unions will make you face your shit, whether you want to or not. It will,
Well, everything that you hear in the community takes on a hugely magnified meaning in these types of relationships. Like, stay in your own lane. Well, you're in a partnership of a much higher frequency than we've all experienced before, right? Like, we all had the kind of experiences that Ingrid was talking about coming out of and all that. So that part is there. You're working jointly, but there's still that individual path, individual path of integrity and of truth and of desire to grow and of handling your own stuff and all that stuff.
That's so important, Todd. And like, even for us, we're growing and learning all the time, but coming up against these things, continually still. We've not mastered it, but we do have a commitment to growing all the time. One of the things we did recently, this period of the coronavirus and all this stuff that's been going on, it's been challenging on a lot of relationships. A lot of people in quarantine and everything, it's been tough. So we were included in that. We went through some challenges, and the thing that benefited us the most was taking the time on our own individual journeys and prioritizing that first.
Yeah.
So, for example, I've gotten really into Kundalini yoga. I just yesterday completed my first 40-day Kriya process with meditations. And I noticed that throughout that entire time, I was showing up as a better partner, I think. Tell me if you think that's true. And the same with Hamilton. He was committing to some spiritual groups he was involved in. And then we were coming back together so much more loving, so much more kind, so much more willing to be patient. So I definitely encourage that for anyone who's going through challenges, especially right now. When you prioritize self-care, it just enhances the way that you can show up in love. Yeah. And that's been really, really helpful for us.
It really is the best thing you can offer to anyone else and to the world, is to take care of yourself as best you can, because you put yourself into this state of being that is just so magnetizing and so effortlessly inspiring. When you see somebody really, really vibrating on that, like they're just staying in their own lane, and they're really focused on that, and really living in focusing on living your own joy. It's like, it's so, people are attracted to it, and they're like, what's going on with them? What do they got going on?
Where's that Kool-Aid at?
Right, exactly. And I think that's the best gift that we can offer to
world. When any of us, and we all do it, the idea is to sustain it for longer periods of time, right? I mean, that would be the theory. But when you're staying in your own lane, and personal care, which is the root to me of the Trinity energy, because however I treat myself is how I'm going to treat my partner and humanity, right? I mean, they should be equal. Every thought, word, and action theoretically would be an equal expansion offered in each thing that I do. But if you're in your own lane and you're managing yourself, especially in these times, now maybe it'll change because there's a lot to be said for how flow is becoming more apparent, and and the universe is reciprocating and instant manifestation. But when you stay in your own lane, and you, as the God goddess you are the priority. I am the God goddess in the human form. What do I do with this now? I got all this information. Now, what do I do? This is the heaven, right? But when you do that, you don't see that person talking about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you don't see that person with their nose in somebody else's business.
Right.
It is more like a tuning fork type of effect. You know, I mean, you're
Agreed.
right.
It's
People
always,
might notice you by sight or by something you say, or you know what I mean, or right.
or an energy. It's always more appealing to me to see someone who's living by their own example.
Yeah.
And I want to know what they're doing because I'm seeing this light emanating from
Right.
them.
Yeah.
Than them to come and tell me or teach me or preach to me why the way they're living is
Exactly.
right.
Even the example in just our relationship, like when she's mentioning this Kundalini yoga stuff, it's like she hasn't had to once try to convince me or tell me like, hey, you should try this yoga because like it's been, you know, just watching her do it, I'm
Right.
like, I kind of want to try it, you know, like because I'm seeing the benefits and just her state of being. I'm seeing the way she is kind of giving her a different kind of glow.
It's a great example. That's a great example because Ingrid mentioned about not controlling at the very beginning of the show. And that's for everybody. You know what I mean? I mean, and it's not even about relationships. It's about let go of control to control, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a little meme the other day. The power is in the powerlessness. There's something about giving up our power that was connected to the old patriarchal templates where you got to give up the old to get the new. And it's a kind of it looks to be a smoother and smoother ride.
Like because it's almost like shifting from giving something up or cutting something off to transmutation. Yeah. You know, I see those words changing. Someone's like, I'm just going to cut them off. Or I'm just going to, but there's a way that can be transmuted instead of just having to be this intense blockage of something, because that still keeps it tied to you in a way.
My definitions of trust and surrender are continually evolving, and the way that I understand trust is really changing. But I think it has a lot to do with that, of just kind of like letting go. It's like realizing there's very little that we are really control.
Yeah, exactly. It is what it is.
If there is one thing that it is, it's kind of like our perspective. The way I show up, and
that's right. That's right.
But that's so much at the same time. And it's everything.
And that, I think that power of focus, where you focus your thoughts and intention, is the most powerful creative tool that we have as divine co-creators in this existence. So, you know, just making that the one thing that we try to control, and kind of like accepting everything else. Like you said, it is what it is. Like it wouldn't be what it is if there wasn't something for this moment to offer to us. There's something that it's offering to us. There's some kind of lesson, and being able to accept that and kind of like trust that and be like, okay, this wouldn't be happening, even though it feels like I don't like it, you know, it wouldn't be happening if it didn't have something to offer me right now. So what is that? You know,
that's right. Regardless, 10 years ago when I woke up, one of the big things I heard was, it doesn't matter if it was a circumstance or a consequence. It's all the same thing. And I thought, what the hell does that mean? And then I realized it just was taking me out of the past. It was taking me out, I made this decision, so this happened, or this person did something to me. And it really put the focus on what's there to work with. And, and instead of it being a liability, it becomes a potential asset.
Mm-hmm. Yes, a potential asset is a great point. We talk about focus. It's a great kind of streamline into this idea, because you had asked about manifesting your twin flame, or what do you do if you want to manifest someone like that, or even a soulmate. And one of the main things, all right, he's going to let Hamilton out real quick. One of the main things that I talk about all the time that really served me when I was wanting to create this relationship, and even in the separation time that I had with Hamilton, was that I focused on my vision of love and not the person. So I didn't attach my desire for this kind of connection to him, because energetically that often pushes people away. That's a lot of energy to be placing on one person, and you know that they have to carry the weight of all this expectation you have. So even though I was very much in love with him in that separation period, putting the focus on the vision of love was so powerful, because if he was going to vibrate with that, he would come into that with me. And if not, then that space was going to be made for the person who would. So that it was very freeing. And that was just a shift of focus from putting all the focus on, you know, my partner, this person that I was very much in love with. to the
Yeah.
vision of love instead.
And that's a constant dance, I think, in any kind of intention or goal that we have of with something we want to create in life, is to remember that it's not our job to worry about the how. You know, with my, sure, I'm
Yes.
pretty creative and I can think of,
Yeah.
you know, plans and strategies to get what I am wanting. But, you know, the universe is so much infinitely more creative than anything that I could come up with. And so, you know, this constant reminder to open my field of vision, to think of manifesting as receiving and opening to a possibility that's already there, rather than something I gotta like enforce my will upon.
That's right.
You know, because the mind always wants to do that.
Well, this is the dance right now. I mean, this is, you know, you got the patriarchal, which, you know, I know we get caught up in the masculine feminine a lot because, you know, that's just the way it's gone. But, you know, again, it's a very rigid, straight lines, you know, sharp turns. And so that's what I was getting at. Like even in really in everything. And we talk about it on the show all the time. You know, it's the mother goddess energy coming back. Now, if that's the way that it runs in this realm, it looks pretty obvious to me, or what's needed or what's happening, that feminine in all of us is now coming back, which means the false masculine energy in all of us is fading. Yeah. But you know, if that's how all the multiverses run, I don't know. I think if God has a gender, God's a woman. That's just my personal opinion. And we're playing in the womb.
Good answer.
Yeah. I was going to ask you,
I was going to ask you a question. I was just going to see, have there been any ways that you personally feel like you've been tapping into that feminine energy flow? I mean, obviously,
you know, you know what, I got chills running all up and down me right now. I feel like I'm talking to Todd and Morgan, to be honest with you. And I haven't talked about this. I made a little comment about it in one of the shows yesterday. So Morgan and I, obviously, we've been cohabitating for 2 years. And we have been very vocal about our journey. As some things specifically as we've been guided, which is one of those is sacred sexuality. And so, you know, we talked about over the last few months how there's been kind of a androgynous energy, you know, in our sacred sexual interludes, which is really our life, you know, because it's not just, you know, when your clothes are off and you're in bed, you know, whatever.
Right.
But over the last, I think the last month has been a very powerful month based on my experience with talking to people and myself and Morgan and just observing things. For me, there's been a huge, what is the word? I think it's embodiment of the feminine. And I shit you not. I mean, it's been mind blowing. And particularly the last few nights. So when you ask me that, if you'd have asked me that 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago, I would have had a different answer, and it would have been more of conjecture, more of just the spiritual bypassing type of stuff, unconscious and not in judgment. Sure. But now I think that this energy is grounding itself big time. There's women and men fully, or at least to a high enough degree, balancing that, you know, having that divine marriage within them. And I believe that part of that is represented by wild, crazy individual experiences like I'm referring to that I've had within myself, which was, you know, when you're in your body, and you're a man and you're 59 and you feel totally like a woman, like a feminine, I should say. You feel totally feminine, like to every sensation, to every cell. And I won't go any further than that. But yes, the answer is yes. Wow. And I believe it's happening all over the place. I believe it's happening in big numbers, not just the males embodying their feminine, but vice versa. And also many other things that kind of run parallel in terms of, you know, ascension barometers or metrics.
Totally.
You know?
And I think will facilitate so much compassion You know, if we're getting these opposing experiences and getting it, like you said, it would have just been, you know, conjecture, this idea 10 days ago, but now it's experiential. You've actually had this
Yeah.
experience that's grounding you
Yeah.
in this truth. I mean, how powerful is that? And I think going back to what we said about the dedication to inner growth, if everyone were to do that, I can just imagine, just to put their growth first, to prioritize that. I mean, how quickly would things change in for the better?
It's such a, you know, it's such a, because we're stuck with these words. The minute you say sex, right? So if you say sacred sexuality, immediately people are thinking, you know, we're buck naked and we're getting it. You know, this is the minimal part of this whole energy as I have experienced it and as I am
Yeah.
being initiated into it. And I'm talking about, I'm in nursery school. Okay.
Totally.
But when you're in situations where you see the multidimensionality of your partner, you see what I would call morphine. So you can call it shapeshifting. You can call it, you know, you see the ceiling disappear, the walls disappear. You have these interludes that are never the same.
Yeah.
You can get, I could get lost in the small of her back, and I'm in 5 different universes, and 3 hours later I come out having 200 female orgasms on my right leg or some crazy shit, you know. But regardless of how, a true story, regardless of how the person experiences it, it is a stargate. It's not even a stargate. It's multiple stargates in this atmosphere that is really rooted in our true nature. And it is the seed of new creativity and new birth and new earth and everything else. And it's mind blowing. It's non-human in the human. And I think that's what, you know, why I've, you know, over the last, you know, especially the last couple of years, I've become, you know, very, very, well, coming from a very strong conviction more and more every day in regards to the importance of sacred sexuality.
Yes. And
big time. We're totally on
that page. And that, I think there's it's intentional, the kind of, I want to say, like dumbing down of the sexual experience that's happened. We're getting the tip of the iceberg of what the true capacity and power can be. And we've, you know, just been dancing on the edges of that. But we discovered a practice called Kareza, which is basically non-goal oriented, very slow, intentional sexual experiences. Some people would think about tantra, similar things to that. But the one of the women back in the early 1900s who was writing on this process was writing about it. Was it 1800s? Yeah. Long time ago, was writing about this experience from the perspective of actually uplifting mankind. I mean, she wasn't just talking about it for the benefits it has within a relationship, which it does, but she was talking about transforming to a whole nother level of consciousness.
And it's fascinating. And the difference that, you know, the whole act of conception can make when it's a totally mindful act. And there's, you know, the focus is on complete union and just really being present with one another, and experiencing that sort of spiritual union along with the physical, the way that shifts even the whole way that a new life comes into the world. And that's something that's been fascinating to me to explore as well. Like when I was getting into David Data's writing and stuff, he talks so much about sacred sexuality and this idea that our sexual energy is the exact same thing as our creative energy.
It is.
And, you know, and it's such an important thing for men, especially, I think, to take command of that energy and understand how deeply powerful it is and really start utilizing that and grounding with intention rather than just sort of getting lost in lust and just releasing that energy whenever. And, you know, and just, you know, I think something we've talked about a bit on our channels before, and I have like a poem that I performed at a whole thing about like deconstructing toxic masculinity is about.
You mean the part where they cut your balls off?
Well, that, yeah, but I mean,
That's it. You got to cut those balls off before to go into the 0 point to get your new etheric balls and enter that field. You know what I mean?
Etheric balls. I can't say I've heard the term together before.
Yeah.
But well, even like the ways that you know, it was something that I spoke on at this event was like the pornography industry,
Yeah, of course.
and the way that really has lessened our ability to experience this sacred sexuality, and sort of like really misled so many men in particular. And it was something that I struggled with personally, and had been open to Ingrid about when we were even first starting our relationship. But I started more and more understanding this way that, like, as I was exploring meditation, as I was exploring mindfulness, I was realizing that pornography was such a huge obstacle for that, of just being present and being in touch with my own creative power. And our union has really helped me tremendously, like grow through that and heal a lot of that. And I think it's such a huge conversation that's not being had. Like, this whole industry is such an elephant in the room, and it's so normalized, but it's really a destructive force.
Yeah, we're trying to talk about it here, and that's another thing. Back to Ingrid's question earlier is, and I explained it. This is what I brought up yesterday on one of the shows. That's all I had talked about and I was saying it from a metaphoric standpoint, and like you said a while ago, they get it. Like Morgan knew when she came to U.S. and she was very, and you were laughing because you said it works the same way, and that's how it works. Well, the sacred sexuality between two is like the core. It's like the concentrate of our, our alignment in our creative ability, in our magic. And so then it is, the repercussions of that go out into all aspects of our life. So I was just drawing this analogy, and I said, or this metaphor, and I said, so imagine getting into bed, traditional energies, feminine, masculine, and you lay down, and the masculine doesn't make a move. Just doesn't make a move. That's it. This is total submission. This is total surrender. Why? She's never done it. But so it's symbolic and representative of what's happening on the earth and what needs to happen in order to bring this back into balance. And it goes right down into what we call the bedroom, which is really our relationship 24/7. You could be walking through a parking lot holding hands, and your two pinkies are soulgasming. This is the kind of energy we're talking about. But
this electricity.
We've literally like been exploring that very thing of like, that's what Kareza kind of challenges the man to do, is to be still.
And I wanted to just like bounce off of something it said about conception. That's not just conception of like a child. No. That's conception of an idea, of an evolution, of breakthroughs. It's like erasing that idea that it's only available for that one conception. It can conceive so many beautiful things. And the other nice thing about Kareza is that because it's not goal oriented, because it's not trying to get somewhere, you're not worrying about that. And especially at the time when she was talking about this in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that was a big concern for a lot of women, that they weren't able to explore these realms of sexuality without worrying about child rearing. And if they weren't ready to do that, that was very stressful. So she was bringing in this idea of the freedom that's given, especially to the feminine, to not have to, be concerned about that unless it's chosen, unless they decide to have that kind of conception. That every sexual interaction has the opportunity to conceive something really beautiful.
And how powerful would we be as manifestors? There's a really interesting book that we read actually before this other one called Cupid's Poisoned Arrow. And a woman who wrote it, Marnia Robinson, she's actually married to this guy named Gary Wilson, who had a whole really successful book called Your Brain on Porn. But it's a fascinating exploration of like the neurochemical results of orgasm and the sort of like emotional roller coaster that creates. But also, she goes back through worldwide history of all these different cultures that viewed sexual transcendence as and, you know, abstaining from orgasm as a vehicle to spiritual transformation. And it's really fascinating book, but it really kind of turned my view, especially of like what sex is and what it can be, on its head. And it's something that I've just really been interested in exploring recently, and we've been exploring together, is like just how to take that process. And like you said, the bedroom is just a reflection.
That's right.
This dance between the masculine and feminine energy, that's a reflection of what's happening on the entire planet right now. And how can we enter into that dance more mindfully? And for me, as the masculine showing up, what can I, if I switch my perspective of like, how can I just get pleasure for myself? How can I just, you know, serve my own selfish sexual needs, rather than if I enter into it instead of like, how can I praise the divine feminine goddess? What can I offer all of myself to you know, basically worship the goddess energy? Because I'm with you, man. If there is a goddess, it's a woman, and showing up that way into the bedroom, it just totally shifts the whole experience, and quite frankly makes it a lot more enjoyable. You know,
well, there's no, you know, it's just another copy. I mean, there's no bullshit. And look, I'm sitting here, we're having this conversation. I can tell you, it's been a hell of a journey for me. It's been step, and that was that distorted masculine, step by step, drip, drip, drip. You know, and realizing these things by the guidance.
Yeah.
Both verbally and not, from the feminine through the goddess incarnated in my life, right? So I mean, it's the front edge of it. I think
it's a very humbling journey, isn't it, man? Like,
dude, it's, you know, when you and I've talked about this, and I do think it's starting to come out now. I had a great conversation Monday with a friend of mine who was right on the money with it, and you're talking about stepping into that sacred realm with her, without a libido, without a hard on, without any balls, without any muscle, without any alpha male. You're talking about walking into a space where you're literally just birthing the new divine masculine, which, from what I can tell so far, thank God, has this power that's primordial. That's, my friend calls it the what did he call it? The I forget now. Something God, the horn God. It's this primordial force within us that has been not seen, just as she was not seen, because this is the lover of her. This is the divine masculine. So, you know, it's not some dude walking in that's, you know, looks like the Hulk that's gonna beat the hell out of everybody, but it's a masculine force walking in the room that has this soft power, that has this wisdom, like you were talking about. When you see people and they're emanating, this is it. I had two questions, and I never do this, but you have to do things. You have to respect the spontaneous, right? The intuition.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my question to Ingrid is, who is the king? What is the king? And to you is what is the goddess? Who is the goddess? And I figured, since you're both poets, that we might get a pretty cool answer. Either one of you can go first, if you don't mind.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I can. Well, you know, it's funny because as you were, I don't know if I have like a just quick answer to that, or just a one-word answer, but I would say as you were speaking, I was realizing this masculine presence that has been birthing through me as I've done this Kundalini yoga process. Because one of the most powerful things I took from this 40-day dedication was the consistency and the ability to be present for myself every day, whether I felt like it or not. There were some days and I was like, I don't want to do this shit. Like, I'm so tired. And to do it anyway. it
Yeah.
felt like a cultivation of that power and presence within me.
Hmm.
And then I would say the king, I can't describe it as a entity, but I can say that I see it in Hamilton when he's in this peace and this presence, and I've always known it was there. And he's explained he's gone through some challenges, you know, with this sexual journey and the pornography and the way that affects your ability to show up as a true masculine presence. But when I first saw him and we had that moment looking at each other across the room in this eye gazing, I saw it then. And when he is at most home with himself,
Yeah.
and just present, that's what it is. It's this beautiful presence, and that is the king. And that is in me too. And I'm discovering that as we can reflect that, as we were talking about these reflections in each other, that is the king. That's how it's birthed for me. And it's a moment to moment thing. Sometimes it's present, it's sometimes it's not. It ebbs and flows.
I think it's a constant learning of like how to get there. And I think I agree with you, just to speak on the king thing. Like I feel it when I'm in that, when that presence comes in. And I think for me, the work is to, like you said, clear the vessel enough for that divine presence to come in. And when I am connected to it, it feels very still. I think that's
there's a stillness
that's the most
about
pinpointed.
I agree.
And so that I can give to describe that kind of aligned masculine presence, it feels like a stillness and like a not wanting for anything kind of thing. It's just, it is what it is, and I'm here and I'm present. Yeah. And that's it, you know. For the queen, for the goddess, like I think it's man, it's such a more, you mentioned morphing earlier. I feel like the goddess is constantly morphing. Sometimes she's wrathful, sometimes she's just embracing and just full of compassion and love, and sometimes it's challenging, and sometimes it's emotional and very emotional and very, you know, a storm of emotions. And I think it's all of that. It's everything, you know.
Can I speak to that too? Ocean. Just like for me, when I feel like I'm in the divine feminine goddess place, it feels like open. That's the word I would say. Because whether it's open to rage or open to that love flow or open to whatever's going on in the moment, it doesn't reject anything. It's this openness that has the power to then transmute whatever's being experienced through, you know, in this case, the body or through the feminine vessel.
I think it feels like really fluid, powerful expression of everything. And
endless.
Yes.
Like there's no bottom.
And that's right. That's why it's beyond surrender. I mean, it's you mentioned surrender. To me, it's 2 nights ago when we lay down, I had a vision, and I don't feel comfortable talking about it. And everyone knows I'm an open book, but it's such a sacred thing that occurred. And but it was a what the hell was it? It was a simultaneous thing, like everything with the universe. It was the last piece of the respected, honored, and revered distorted masculine part of me, right? It was the very last piece. And not only was it the last piece, it was the darkest piece. It was the most masculine of all the pieces, right? You know what I mean? But at the same time, the shift, that's when the feminine fully came in, right? And it was like God, I can't even think of the word, but it was beyond surrender. And it was almost like there was a grief, and there was obviously a death, and almost like a defeat. But it was so minimal, infinitesimal, the action reaction. And then when she came in, when my feminine came in, that's what it felt like. It was what you just said. It was like never ending, you know, mama's home, it's all good, and let's go to the next adventure kind of thing. That's how it felt. It was incredible. You guys, if I didn't have a show, another 2 shows, I would try to keep you on and see if I can get you guys.
I mean, I'm loving these conversations.
Yeah, I know this is cool. Hey, you know, I'm in Arkansas.
I love how it's gone, where we've gotten. I liked how at the beginning of this conversation, I had no idea this is where we'd end up. I love.
You never know on this show, but it's the real stuff. This is where, you know, and I say this every day, and I'm going to keep saying it. But our highest and greatest downloads, channelings, activations, and all that code come from, in my opinion, from these conversations, whether it's online or whether it's just you and a friend or a group of friends. This is where the
just
real
saying yes. I'm so glad that, you know, this opportunity shows up, and saying yes can lead to so many amazing things, and doing so with an open heart and positive expectation. And just, if we're going towards the end, I just want to mention again that we do have our YouTube channel, Twin Soul Poets, where we dive into more of these kinds of ideas that we've been talking about.
Yeah, hang on, let me put.
And then also on Instagram, Twin Soul Poets as well.
Twin Soul Poets.
Yeah, and our website, twinsoulpoets.com, has links to, you know, our poetry books. People can book private coaching with us. Like, we coach single people who are looking to manifest their deep, soulful love relationship, and we also work with people who are already in relationships to, you know, help navigate some of these challenges that we've been talking about. But yeah, like, we're easy to find, Twin Soul Poets on everything.
Please reach out, connect to us. We love talking to people, and just expanding our community of like-minded people who just really want to, you know, embrace this change in consciousness that we're all experiencing.
So how do I reach out to you personally?
We have our email on our website, where we can be emailed. You can message us on Instagram.
Those are the easiest ways, either messaging us on Instagram or just direct email. Our email address is up on our website, twinsoulpoets.com.
Hang on, let's see. I just got to do, you know, Twin Soul Poets. I don't know if it's because I'm 59 or if it's because of ascension amnesia, but I got to make sure I do it now. There you are. Look at that. That's beautiful. Contact. Okay, I'm going to send you a note. And I'm about 7.5 hours away from you. I'm in right outside of Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm saying that, but if you guys are actors and you guys are poets and you do slams, I've never done a slam. I've done some open mics, you know, with the music and the soul speaking, but I've never done it. I've always wanted to do a slam. We do some open mics. I haven't done one in about 3 months, but we usually do about 1 to 2 a month. Open mics here online, and we get like 10 of us in there, and we just like a drum circle. We just go around. Everybody does their own thing. Lots of different types of expression, light language.
His thing. He loves a good drum circle. You know.
Yeah.
That's his happy place.
Right on. I really look forward to collaborating with you guys again in the future. We'd
love to continue the conversation. This is awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I put up your website on all the platforms, and I put up your information for your IG and your YouTube.
Great. And thanks everybody watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation.
Right on.
I'd love to hear from you guys.
And make sure you subscribe to Todd. This will go up on your YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And
it's on
we'll
post it up too.
We'll definitely share your stuff with our following as well, because it's been really fun, and we'll definitely be in touch, man. Really enjoyed it.
Right on. You guys take care. I love you. Peace out.